Are you going to do a review of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina? When are you going to do the review for the Chilling Adventures? Did you watch the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina? I'm ready to review the series. You look like David Bowie to me. Amazing.
Okay, I'll talk about it. So spoiler alert, I do agree with the general consensus, this is a very good show. Is it the best show I've ever seen? Well, that remains to be seen for the duration of this review. So I think for the sake of cohesiveness in this review, what I'm going to do is break this review up into story, aesthetics, and then I'm going to kind of talk about the more occult things towards the end, and then I'm also going to answer like a few of your questions about other stuff right at the end of this video. I really won't be going through this episode by episode. I actually already filmed a video where I did that, and it was just kind of really long, but if that's something you guys want to see, let me know and I might refilm it, but it was just so long. So if you watched my Chilling Adventures of Sabrina comic review, you know that I said I felt like the show looked a little bit too clean, and I kind of still agree with that, but with what they did, it made sense, because the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the show is not the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the comic. They're so different, it's ridiculous, and the style they chose for the show works for the show. In terms of the storyline, I like the overall plot, I like the beginning, the middle, and the end, and I like the development of Sabrina and Prudence in particular. I started out the series like flat out hating Prudence, and by the end of the series I'm like, oh, she's low-key my favorite character. I think where the story fails is for the first 4 episodes. The series really doesn't know what it wants to be. And then episode 5 just failed on all accounts, and I'll talk about that in great detail in a moment because I need to rant about episode 5. And then from episode 6 onwards, they started to like figure out what they wanted the show to be. But where the comic is solidly in the genre of horror, the show is really more of a young adult drama with horror elements, and that's okay. And I'll tell you for why that's okay. With horror, you kind of need an end goal in sight from the very beginning, if not very close to the beginning. It's just kind of like a staple of the genre. You have the character's journey towards that end goal, and the scary things happen along the journey. This is only a rule that really applies to horror TV shows and horror movies, by the way. Books and comics don't really tend to subscribe to this, although it is very common in books. Even the original comic for the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina doesn't really have an end goal, but is so solidly involved with horror elements, like people waking up to not having a face anymore, blood sacrifice of people, there's murders and issues, Harvey gets his entire jaw bitten off. It's just so far into horror that you can't deny it's horror, even though it doesn't have an end goal. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the show spends so much time on the emotional state of Sabrina and the characters around her that you can't deny it's a drama. And that's okay, and I'll tell you for why that's okay. To explain my point here, we're gonna take a look at the show American Horror Story. I am a huge American Horror Story fan, and they're currently doing American Horror Story Apocalypse, which is their first sequel season. Apocalypse is the sequel to Coven and Murder House. What they're struggling with in this season is balancing that line between drama and horror, because they're spending so much time developing the emotional state of characters, which makes sense. We've already seen a lot of these characters involved with a huge storyline that it makes sense to develop their emotional state more. However, this directly contrasts in the interests of horror, because in horror you're not really developing a character's overall psyche and emotional state, you're developing it where it's relevant to the horror itself. This is very clear in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, like we know so much about these characters where it's not relevant to the horror. And I like that because it allows for much deeper and much longer storytelling. This will allow us to have a season 2, a season 3, a season 4, and so on. This is the reason why so many horror TV shows only have 1 season, because they can only tell 1 story. And after 1 season, that story is done. And I know some of you are thinking, so are you really arguing the change in genre was necessary? No, I don't really think it was necessary, but I do think if they wanted to do more than 1 season, it was absolutely necessary. But I do like it either way. I'm going to stress that I do like the show as it is. I just think it would be interesting to see an alternate universe where we got 1 horrifying season rather than 1 drama season. So like I said, I kind of feel like the show didn't know what it wanted to be at the beginning. It sort of felt like a teen drama with horror elements for the first 2 episodes. Then they found that young adult groove, which makes things a little bit more mature. But the 1 episode where I almost stopped watching the show because I hated it so much. I hate this episode with every fiber of my being, and I want to go to that studio and be like, what were you thinking? Was episode 5 the sleep demon episode. So let's set the stage for this episode. Sabrina's had to go to witch school, basically, and they've given her this puzzle box because she wants to do conjuring, and they're like, if you can figure out the answers to this puzzle box, you can start doing conjuring class. No one's been able to figure it out, but it was created by your father. With a bit of help from her father's journals, Sabrina figures it out, and this lets loose a demon in the house. From this point onwards, we never hear about Sabrina doing conjuring again. It's an entire dropped plot point. It's contrived. So contrived. It's ridiculous. So the Spellmans trap the demon in the house so the demon can't get out and wreak havoc on the town. What they don't know is just after they trap the demon in the house, the demon put them all to sleep. I feel so sorry for whoever played this demon because I'm sure they're a fantastic actor. Just they couldn't act through those prosthetics. If your actor can't act through their prosthetics, take them off and just have the actor look like a person. We already have seen one demon that looks like a person, Madam Satan. She's a flat-out demon. I know she's masquerading as a witch, but she is a demon. Just have your demon look like a person. No one would complain. I would much rather have a really well-done performance where the actor just kind of looks like a person, but we're told they're a demon, rather than someone with a bunch of prosthetics on their face, and we're just expected to believe that this person that can't act through the prosthetics is a fantastic actor. Like, no, I'm sure that is a fantastic actor, they just couldn't do this job. Then we get onto the dreams themselves. I actually think Sabrina's dream really suited her. I think it made sense for being a teenage girl, especially a witch that's got all of these secrets. That makes sense for her. That's horrifying what she had to go through in that dream. Then we move on to Ambrose, Hilda, and Zelda. Ambrose has been under house arrest for 75 years, and he was already old by the point that he was put under house arrest. That must mean Hilda and Zelda are considerably older than him. Dreams are basically our subconscious digesting life events and memories. Usually it's short term, but it does bring in a lot of long-term aspects as well. So why were these dreams so straightforward? It was just a bad thing happening with a bit of colored lighting. I might as well just say a bad thing here, and it could be part of this episode. I've got colored lighting. I don't believe these dreams would be that straightforward. What I want to see from a dream is something that looks like I'm on psychedelic drugs. I want to see these dream sequences look like an Alejandro Jodorowsky movie. I should have been disturbed by this episode. This should have been the horror episode, the episode where they could drop the young adult drama and go full on horror and sort of say, yep, we're not horror anymore, but we're gonna do it for this one episode. And they just didn't. And then by the end of the episode, we never hear from all of this again. The Spellmans are free, but we never see Sabrina go to witch school being like, I defeated a demon, here's the demon's remains, do something with it. We never see her in conjuring. It just feels so unimaginative, so lazy, and so irrelevant. So I love the rest of the series, but to episode 5, I say thanks, I hate it. So now let's quickly just talk about the later half of the season. From episode 6 onwards, I think they found their groove. I think they figured out what they wanted the show to be. They knew that they really wanted it to sort of be like a slightly more mystical Riverdale, which I'm okay with. I've now since seen Riverdale because of one scene in particular. But my biggest issue of the series is directly related to the final episode and the first 2 to 3 episodes. I can't talk about those until I start talking about occultism. So we're just going to save that, and next we're going to talk about the general aesthetic of the show. First of all, visually, all the actors look the part. They don't look like their comic book counterpart, and I'm okay with that. The comic was set in the 60s, and when I found out the show wasn't set in the 60s, I was really worried. I thought they were going to go too modern, too trendy. But really the show doesn't have a year, and I kind of like that. I was kind of surprised they went with that approach. The clothes don't really have an era associated with them. You know, it's sort of vaguely 80s, 90s, modern day, and I like that. It really works. It's like its own unique fashion style. And I like that so much, and I want to see more of that. But I can't say I don't miss the 80s aesthetic. There's this one scene in the comic where Sabrina and Ambrose are dancing, and you directly see the contrast between American 60s fashion and British 60s fashion. I also understand that because the show had storylines to do with feminism, we had a subplot to do with a trans character, we had all of these things to do with equality that they couldn't really do the show in the 60s because, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, the 60s America wasn't a good time for minority groups. But overall, I do think the aesthetics were done really well. I like that there was no pointing and glitter comes out and magic happens. The magic was somewhat subtle. I wouldn't say it was overly subtle. It was basically like the magic in American Horror Story. So now let's talk about where I do have issues with the show. So as much as it's only really one issue, it's quite a big deal, and it does bring into question the show's overall message of equality, at least the authenticity of it, which I don't like saying, because I don't think there was any bad intentions behind this. I just think there was a lack of research done. So the show treats Satanism, occultism, and witchcraft as if they are all one and the same thing, when in real life, Satanism, occultism, and witchcraft are three totally separate practices. As much as occultism might look into the other two, it's its own thing. Witchcraft is so far removed from Satanism, it's ridiculous. It literally has nothing in common with Satanism. And Satanism is not what we saw in the show. Fun fact, you'll find that most Satanists don't actually believe in Satan. So let's get some counter arguments I'm fully expecting out of the way. Well, number one, you're going to say it's called the Church of the Night, not the Temple of Satanism. You can't use the same imagery from a real-world religion, then give that religion a different name and expect it to not be considered the same religion. They literally used a copyrighted statue from the Temple of Satanism, which they are being sued for using, which brings into question whether or not we'll get a season 2, by the way. And then they worship the same figurehead as Satanism. Now, some Satanists do believe in Satan, but they don't believe in Satan in the same way Christians believe in Satan. So the show portrays the Church of the Night, or the Temple of Satanism, as if they are bloodthirsty, as if they're manipulative, as if you've got no choice but to join, they take away your free will, and all of these horrible, horrible things. Real-world Satanism is founded on the idea that you're able to think for yourself and you get the freedom of choice. They believe the freedom of choice is a birth-given right. So in episodes 1 and 2 of the show, it's revealed that Sabrina's parents basically signed her up to join the Church of the Night before she was even born so they could be together. Real-world Satanism would not do that. That is against everything Satanists believe. If they're going to use the same God and the same imagery from a real-world religion, it is down to them to accurately represent the beliefs of that real-world religion or come up with different imagery and a different God. Because by portraying it in the light that they did, they are misrepresenting a minority group, and they went to so much effort to accurately represent other minority groups, so why is this one the exception? And this does bring into question the authenticity of their willingness to accurately represent minority groups. And again, I don't think this was necessarily a bad thing, I just think there wasn't enough research done. But I do have to question, why didn't they do proper research on Satanism? Do they believe that Satanists are below them? Because if they do, that's kind of crappy. I am not a Satanist, but Satanists or Luciferians, as far as I'm aware, look to Satan and they're like, this dude, theoretically, made the first ever choice. God was making the world and everything, and Satan went, I really don't like this. And then God said, you're jealous of me, and cast him out. And then Satan went to Adam and Eve and said, hey, if you eat this apple, you can think for yourself. So Adam and Eve ate the apple and they were cast out of the Garden of Eden. They believe Satan is all about thinking for yourself, having the right to choose. Whereas in the show, Sabrina had to fight for the right to think for herself. She had to fight for the right to choose. And by the end of the series, she was tricked into joining the Church of the Night. That would not happen with real-world Satanism. That's a horrible thing to do to this belief system. Then we move on to witchcraft. This is not witchcraft. Witches don't believe in demons. Demons are an invention of the Abrahamic religions. As much as equivalents do exist outside of the Abrahamic religions, they're basically an invention of Christianity. So what do witches believe in? Witches believe in 3 goddesses: the crone, the maiden, and the mother. They believe that whenever you cast a spell, you get back whatever you put out 3 times over. And this applies to all facets of life, but especially when you're doing a spell. So they could have very easily explored this in the show. The way I would have done this is in episode 1, when the 3 sisters are casting a curse on Sabrina, they could have had Sabrina see the 3 sisters remove the curse from each other, because they put the curse on Sabrina, so it also went to them as well. On top of that, you do have a crone, a maiden, and a mother in the Spellman family. I know Zelda wouldn't appreciate being called a crone, and she's definitely not a crone in a traditional sense, but she does fulfill that archetype. I'm not saying they can't call themselves witches, but when you're going to use a holiday like Samhain, and that's how it's pronounced, it's not pronounced. Samhain. It's pronounced Samhain. which is a huge festival for witches, pagans, and Wiccans worldwide. Again, if you're going to use a real-world religion's imagery, it's up to you to accurately represent that religion. Otherwise, you do have to create your own things. Then we get into occultism. This isn't occultism in the show. Occultism is not a religion. The best way I can really explain what occultism is with a quote from Alan Moore. He says something to the effect of, "The only place where gods undoubtedly exist is in our minds." This basically splits occultism into two separate schools of thought, but again, there's not really much correlation within these schools of thought because it's not an organized religion. It's barely even spirituality. It's just kind of a way of seeing the world. Some occultists believe that all gods are imaginary, but they're very real because they affect the way people live their lives. So we might as well consider them real, even though they're not. Then you have other occultists that believe belief manifests reality. We see this when we cast a spell. Because of this, every god from the beginning of time that's had someone truly believe in it does exist. So again, occultism is not a religion, and if something calls itself a religion, then it's not occultism. So voodoo, not occultism. Witchcraft, not occultism. Satanism, not occultism. So what is occultism? Occultism literally means hidden knowledge. So what you do is you study the mysticism aspect of every world belief system and religion, and you sort of bring them together to create your own belief system and spirituality and way of existing through the world. This is why I know so much about Kabbalah, because I was fortunate enough to have a dad that used to be a traditional Kabbalist. He's not practicing anymore. And my mum was an occultist as well. So she has a very unique way of looking at the world that's not necessarily the same as mine. With all of this in mind, you can see what we saw in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina was kind of insulting to Satanists and witches, and it definitely wasn't occultism, because even though they made up their own religion, it was a religion. It was organized, it wasn't flexible. I would be interested to see them go into occultism in season 2, like maybe Sabrina loses her powers and by extension her connection with the Dark Lord. They've established their universe, they might as well go with it. But maybe she begins to study other types of mysticism. Maybe like she looks into Kabbalah, because there is a thing called the Hermetic Kabbalistic Tree of Life. So the Hermetic Kabbalistic Tree of Life is directly based off the Kabbalistic Tree of Life from Judaism. The difference is the Hermetic Kabbalistic Tree of Life takes aspects from every single belief system around the world. You can apply Taoism to it, you can apply tarot cards to it. If it works for you, then it's true. I would love to see them explore this in Sabrina and have Sabrina be the first witch to draw her power from this, but this lets through an unimaginable force akin to H.P. Lovecraft into the universe, because these are universal forces we're talking about here. They could do something so much more horrifying with demons that a lot of occultists are worried about. If you play with these universal forces, what are you going to bring forward accidentally? As far as I'm aware, they've already started production on season 2. Some people are like, oh yeah, they've already started filming. As far as my research tells me, they've only started pre-production, so that doesn't mean they're in filming yet. So there is enough time for them to fix these problems. So in summary, I really liked the show and I really liked the overall storyline. I watched the show within 2 days. I wouldn't have watched 10 hours worth of content if I wasn't enjoying myself. But there are some major issues with the show, especially with misrepresentation. I don't think it's too late, and I do think all of these can be improved upon, but I also understand why the Temple of Satan is suing the show. And the Temple of Satan, to clarify, is not suing the show because of how they were represented. They're suing the show for using a copyrighted statue, which does prove that the show really didn't do much research into Satanism, because it is common knowledge amongst Satanists, occultists, and even witches that that statue is a copyrighted piece of work. And I know it's very unlikely that anyone that worked on the show is actually watching this, but if you are, first of all, hi, thank you for watching this, and second of all, here's a proposal for you. Bring me on as like a consultant of the occult. I know a lot about witchcraft, I know a lot about the occult, and I know a weird amount about Satanism, considering I'm not a Satanist. I actively want to see the show improve in representing these aspects, and you're just not going to improve without bringing in a consultant. It doesn't necessarily have to be me, but you do need a consultant. But overall, I'm really looking forward to season 2, and I really do hope the show improves in these aspects, because like I said, I otherwise enjoyed the show, and I really can't wait to see what they do with it. Like, now Sabrina's bad Sabrina, and she's got white hair. She's evil Sabrina. I don't know what that was. I'm really sorry. I'm just gonna get into answering your other questions now. Vince31013 says, when do you think Cassie Sandsmark will show up in Rebirth? She's showing up in the Wonder Comics imprint. I believe she's actually showing up in Young Justice. I don't know if she's going to be a part of the Young Justice team, but it was confirmed by Bendis that's where she's going to be showing up. Unholy Nerd says, if you don't mind me asking, where do you find yourself in 5 to 10 years? Well, as a lot of you know, I am an actor, but I also work as a showrunner on the side. I've had the ability to produce 3 shows in my lifetime, just pilots for them. They have never been taken up, but I would love to have a show of mine taken to full season and maybe have it do 2 seasons, maybe even more. But yeah, I really want to go into making and acting in my own TV shows. JD Wiggins says, if you were able to write any story in DC Comics, who would it be and how would you go about it? For DC, I think the character I'm best equipped to write about is Clarion the Witch Boy, and I would love to do an exploration of occultism through Clarion. I think I would sort of reimagine his origin, so it would be all about him in Limbo Town. But what I would do is have him excommunicated from Limbo Town because he wanted to study magic outside of necromancy. And obviously the witch people view anything outside of their frame of knowledge as impure. They're Puritans. So let's have him explore the universe, learning what he considers to be forbidden magic. Let's have him learn Zatanna's magic. Let's have him go through the Kabbalistic spheres. Heck, Promethea is in the DC universe, and I'd love to see her used properly in a way that Alan Moore would actually like, and I think I'm probably one of the few people that could properly write Promethea with Alan Moore being happy about it. Mad Lad of Shimado says, is there any particular videos that you're proud of? I'm really enjoying doing my Seven Soldiers series. I think I've really come into my own with how I tell stories now and how I like come across on camera. It only took me 4 years. But yeah, I'm really enjoying doing Seven Soldiers. I really like Zatanna, and I really liked the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina video. I am proud of my Runaways video that I did last year, and I'm really proud of my Supergirl video that I did over the summer, the Peter David Supergirl one. Lots of people didn't like that video, but I'm proud of it, so I'm fine. Zachary Salas says, what do you think of the new Sandman comics DC just released? I haven't checked out the new Sandman comics yet. I really want to, but I'm scared that they're gonna be like really bad. Probably I'll do it one day on a whim, and then I'll be like, oh, this is so good. But right now I'm like, not prepared to go in and not like something possibly. So I'll get to it. I promise. It's fine. I'll get to it. It's fine. It's fine. I'll get to it. It's fine. It's fine. No game is fine. It's fine. Sandman. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'll get to it. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's super effective! Okay guys, that is it for today. So what did you think of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina? And do you have any questions for me? Please let me know in the comments down below. Also don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe to all of my social links. Check out my Patreon if you want to support the show. For just $1, you get early access to all of my videos. Also, I do have a PayPal donation link if that's more your speed. But for now, my name is Faust. This has been Exploring Comics, and it is super effective.